Okay, it's now 10:31, so we're ready for our third briefing, which is the briefing by the group advised by Professor Cook on the Wildlife Conservation and Anti-Trafficking Act of 2019. And our presenter this morning is Ariela Levy. Ariela, are you ready?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
I am having trouble finding my video. There we go.
There you go. Okay.
So good morning and good evening to everybody, and thank you for joining us. My name is Ariela Levy, and today I will be presenting the Wildlife Conservation and Anti-Trafficking Act of 2019. Before I begin, I would like to thank my teammates and our wonderful advisor, Dr. Robert Cook, for their support during this process. So to begin this presentation, I would like to give a summary of our legislation. The main objective of the bill is to support wildlife conservation and anti-trafficking at no additional cost to taxpayers. The bill is divided into 4 titles. Title 1 is designed to incentivize participants of wildlife trafficking to come forward through a whistleblower reward system. This will help gather information on trafficking and combat activities at the source. Title 2 is designed to promote wildlife conservation internationally. The Secretary of the Interior will carry out international wildlife program with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Administration to support species conservation globally. Money received from fines will help fund conservation initiatives. Title 3 is designed to prevent trafficking and poaching at the source. A U.S. Fish and Wildlife Officer will be stationed in countries with high trafficking activity to work with local authorities to enforce conservation and anti-trafficking. Finally, Title 4 makes illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing part of a more serious offense under the money laundering statute. Violations of the Magnuson-Stevens Fishery Conservation and Management Act will be subject to large fines and criminal punishment. Money from fines will go towards supporting sustainable fishing and preventing illegally harvested fish from entering U.S. markets. So what is wildlife trafficking? Wildlife trafficking is the illegal gathering, transportation, and distribution of plants and animals and their derivatives, such as horns, skins, and bones. It includes local and regional markets where the poaching occurs, as well as international markets for distribution. It has developed due to the following reasons, though these are not comprehensive: trophy hunting, perceived medicinal value, jewelry, status symbols, and exotic pets. Through this flowchart, we can visualize the impact of wildlife trafficking. Local sustainable demand for wildlife has over the years grown with human population growth and mobility. This has led to the unsustainable taking and distribution of wildlife with 2 major consequences: biodiversity loss and the global movement of plants and animals, resulting in the spread of zoonotic diseases. I will discuss these further in this presentation. So what is the scope of the impact? Well, wildlife trafficking causes huge loss to society and the environment. In 2014, Defenders for Wildlife estimated that the world's traffickers were selling around 350 million animals and plants a year. The World Bank estimates that this costs $20 to $60 billion a year in ecosystem service losses. The UN estimated that wildlife trafficking accounts for around 23 billion of global GDP. This is mostly comprised of gains to illegal traffickers. In terms of impact and scope, the problem rivals the illicit drug trade. First, we will cover biodiversity loss. Biodiversity loss is the extinction of a species worldwide, or loss of a species in a certain habitat. If far-reaching, this can result in ecosystem collapse and loss of ecosystem services. Ecosystem services are the direct and indirect contributions of ecosystems to humans. Loss in biodiversity jeopardizes ecosystem health. in turn impacting human well-being. To illustrate the multifaceted impact of wildlife trafficking, we will follow the story of the scalloped hammerhead shark. These sharks are predators at the top of the marine food webs. They are found primarily in warm coastline waters in the tropics. They are widely overfished for their fins, which are served as delicacies with perceived medicinal value in China and neighboring regions. A bowl of shark fin soup can sell for up to $100. Due to increasingly high demand, an estimated 73 million total sharks are killed each year only for their fins. This has resulted in devastating ecosystem impacts. Overfishing of hammerhead sharks resulted in increased population of cownose rays, a predator in the middle of the food chain. The increase in cownose rays led to the decimation of bivalve mollusk populations. This, in turn, resulted in the collapse of an 100-year-old scallop fishery in North Carolina. The story of the hammerhead shark is just one example of how unsustainable poaching and ecosystem collapse can affect human livelihoods. This map shows one possible transit path of the hammerhead sharks. Trafficking begins with harvesters, including trappers, poachers, and guides. For hammerhead sharks, these often include poor coastal communities. Intermediaries, including smugglers, customs officials, and vendors, work complicated networks to distribute the animals and plants to markets. Finally, we have the consumers. From people searching for animal parts for medicine to others looking for new additions to their zoos, consumers are varied and drive the demand for the product. As you move your way up the supply chain, profit margins increase greatly. While local hunters are exploited and earn very little, profits for those who govern the trade rival profits from drug trafficking. Due to the high profits of illegal wildlife trafficking, there is significant involvement by organized crime groups. As seen by this map, for hammerhead sharks, one of the trafficking paths begins in Costa Rica, where it's governed by the Taiwanese mafia. They are then transported to Honolulu for further distribution in Hong Kong. So what are the impacts of wildlife trafficking on human livelihoods? As aforementioned, the overfishing of hammerhead sharks resulted in the collapse of a fishery, affecting the employment of many. Furthermore, declines in biodiversity can impact ecotourism. As with hammerhead sharks, many coastal populations rely on the sharks to entice vacationers. Globally, ecotourism is valued at around $77 billion and generates employment for millions. Declines in biodiversity and perceived threats from organized crime in regions has devastating impacts on human livelihoods. Finally, through the global movement of plants and animals, wildlife trafficking poses major threats to humans. It promotes illegal activities, distributes invasive species, and introduces novel plant and animal diseases. Given current global concerns, we will be focusing on the spread of zoonotic diseases. So zoonotic diseases are illnesses caused by germs, microbial organisms, or pathogens that are passed from animals to humans. It is estimated that between 60 and 75% of emerging infectious diseases in humans come from other animals. Through increased animal-human interactions, often with limited safety precautions, wildlife trafficking augments the risk that a disease could spread. Diseases spread either through direct transmission, when people come in contact with bodily fluids of infected animals, or indirect transmission, via objects that can harbor disease agents, such as food, water, or vectors, including mosquitoes. Regarding wildlife trafficking, we are most concerned with direct transmission. We will visit this through the case study of pangolins. Pangolins are the world's most commonly trafficked animal. Their scales and blood are presumed to have medicinal benefits in Asian and African cultures, and their meat can be considered a delicacy. Pangolins play an important role in their ecosystem as they regulate insect and pest populations, helping to maintain soil and crop quality. In this image, we see a man scaling a pangolin, coming in direct contact with it without any protective gear. Pangolins are known to host many viruses, and some studies have suggested a potential connection between SARS-CoV-19 and pangolins. Through the international distribution of the species, wildlife trafficking has the potential to play a significant role in widespread disease dissemination. This is most concerning when species are transported to regions where they are not endemic and locals do not have antibodies for these possible diseases. This is indeed the case for most wildlife trafficking stories. In our following presentation, we look forward to addressing solutions to the problem wildlife trafficking poses. The examples in this presentation only provide a small snippet of the whole story. If left unchecked, wildlife trafficking can have devastating impacts on both natural and anthropogenic systems. Thank you for your attention, and we are now open to questions.
Thank you, Ariela. Very nice. Good job. And Stephanie, do we have any questions?
We don't have any questions yet. Oh, here we go. We have a question from Karen.
Okay.
Hi, Ariel. I have two quick questions. One is sort of about the definition of ecological services. I still feel a little bit confused about that. And the second is, can these zoonotic diseases be spread by just a fin, or do you need to have like a live animal?
Yeah, definitely. So your first question regarding ecosystem services, these are usually separated into 3 categories, which include supportive services. So maybe the role the animal plays in the ecosystem and maintaining its health. And then provisional services. So these are services that humans can extract from nature. And then cultural services, which include ecotourism or just the value of the animal or plant. And then for your second question, they can spread primarily through contact with the bodily fluids. So this is still not fully well understood, but I think they could definitely spread through shark fins as long as you come into contact with some form of the fluid. There's a risk for that.
Great, we have another question from Emily.
Hi, I was wondering how, and I understand if this gets too far into the solution component of the semester, but how your bill handles the sort of entrenched cultural significance of some of these trafficked animals. You mentioned the pangolin. Does the bill have a strategy for handling the cultural component to this issue?
So the bill doesn't directly address that and is more so focused on the US side of things, but I believe that there has been significant progress around the world through different international governments to sort of dissuade people from either perceived medicinal values, or I know a lot of countries have made progress on ivory to say that it should not be trafficked. And I think that would be targeted through their respective countries.
Great, last call for questions. All right, I think that's it.
Okay, well, thank you, Ariela. Very good presentation, excellent.